Welcome back to Good Girls Gotta Heal, the podcast where we learn to release the weight of childhood trauma and step into our most authentic selves. It's time to ditch that good girl mask and embrace a life of ease, compassion, and genuine connection. Join me, Megan Walsh, holistic trauma therapist, and let's embark on a journey of healing and self-discovery together. Let's dive in. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Good Girls Gotta Heal. I am Megan, your host, and we are joined today by a fellow Meg. We have Meg Bowman here, and Meg is a licensed nutritionist who helps people with conditions that make life tough. As an integrative clinical nutritionist specializing in mental health issues and the physical conditions that go with them, Meg works with clients to nourish their mind, body, and nervous system. She uses food, herbs, and supplements, as well as biofeedback tools and integrative practices to support her clients' needs. Meg, I'm so excited to chat with you. Thank you so much for being here today.
It is such a pleasure. I'm super excited to chat.
Yes. Just even reading your bio, I get very excited because you know what? I think it's rare. And maybe I've had one experience in my clinical career of partnering with a nutritionist with one of my clients to talk about the mental health aspects and the approach. But I love that this is exactly what you specialize in. So I'm so curious, what drew you to nutrition, not just as food science, but as a form of mental health support?
Yeah, I think every career changer who goes the direction of let's midlife hits and we're going to go change the direction of our lives and our careers. I got sick. This is a very common story. I'm not unique in
Yeah.
this.
Yep.
So I had a Crohn's diagnosis about
Mm.
14 years ago. And I think within 2 months, I was back in school. Because it
Mm.
was so clear to me from the get-go how much trauma and stress played a role in my development of Crohn's.
Mhm.
And so really I went back to school, not even with the intention of doing this as a career so much as I just wanted to help myself. And then
Yeah.
about halfway through, I was like, oh, wait, I could maybe do this. And
Yeah.
so it's been just really a joy to watch. When I got out of school a decade ago in the dark ages, nobody talked about mental health and nutrition. And now, it's relatively common. It's been delightful to see.
Yes. Wow. Wow. So thank you for sharing part of your story as to why you stepped into this work that you were doing. And I'm so curious because I imagine some of our listeners are like, wait, how did you know? How did you know that the Crohn's was directly related to some of your own trauma pieces? I'm so curious how you made that connection.
Yeah, it was partly an intuitive
Hmm.
realization. But then when I got into school and I started reading the literature on stress and
Hmm.
trauma and how much that impacts our HPA axis and how much that impacts our immune system, that impacts inflammation, that impacts
Hmm.
everything,
Yeah.
it became pretty clear to me that that was the case for me. And since then, there have been many studies looking at the connection between stress and trauma and disease. And one of my favorites was in JAMA 2013. So it was a hot minute ago, but they found that 60 to 90% of primary care physicians' visits are due to stress and trauma.
Yes. I'm so not surprised.
Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. This is how it shows up in the body. And so I'm not surprised then that you work as an integrative clinical nutritionist. And for people who think that nutrition is really like eat this, not that kind of work,
Yeah.
how would you describe what you do?
Yeah. So I like to borrow therapy phrases every now and
Mm-hmm.
again, and I think this is a
Love
good
it.
place to
Yes.
borrow.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
really think of nutrition as both a bottom up and a top down process. So
Mm-hmm.
bottom up meaning we are going to choose foods and supplements and ways of eating that really bring messages of safety to our physiology. Also, if we're thinking about like a top down way of working at nutrition, we're also going to reframe how we think about nourishing ourselves. We're going to
Mm-hmm.
address those places where we're really getting in our own way and send messages of safety via that pathway. So it's both top down and bottom up.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, it makes so much sense. And I love how you're connecting sending messages of safety because, right, when it comes to trauma, it is all about, all about safety and being able to reestablish safety. And so fascinating. So I'm really curious, what is happening inside of our bodies? And especially I know when we're kind of stuck and feeling not so safe, we might be feeling anxious or burnout or just chronically tired. So, how can nutrition play a role in regulating some of those states?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I want to make sure that we're a little bit cautious. I have
Uh-huh.
this issue too. I want to be a little cautious around the word regulation because sometimes people think that that means let me regulate what I have to eat. And that's not what you're talking about.
Nope.
And that's
Great
also
point.
not what I'm
Great point.
talking about.
Yes. Great
Like we're,
point.
we're talking about how can we experience regulation or how can we experience safety in the nervous system. So really what we're looking at is that bottom up process. So when we are outside of ventral vagal regulation, like if we're looking
Mm-hmm.
at a polyvagal lens, when we're not feeling safe, our body is set up to protect us. That's its entire goal, is to
Yeah.
protect us. Unfortunately, our body has a very hard time distinguishing between a tiger and rodent, or just, a tiger and the endless mountain of laundry or dishes that need to
Yeah.
be done.
Oh gosh. Yes. So
It's
true.
just really hard. And so when
Yeah.
that happens, our nervous system is sending messages to the brain that's like, hey, danger, danger. And then chemicals get released, and we have cortisol and we have adrenaline if it's particularly a little bit of a scary moment. And
Yeah.
all of that impacts how we feel. And if it just happens once, who cares? No big deal. Let's go about our days. But if it's chronic, if it's endless, if it is like living in the environment that we're living in right now, you know,
Uh-huh.
all of a sudden
Yep.
that wear and tear really starts to create, you notice yourself getting sick more often. And then you
Yeah.
notice that you're having a harder time recovering from things. And then you notice that
Hmm.
you get a chronic disease diagnosis and here
Yeah.
we go.
Right. It's so true. It is, yeah, it's this slow and steady spiral that just keeps going and going. And so I'm so curious. Let's say you have a client that kind of walks in to work with you who's kind of in that state of like, oh, I'm getting sick often, or maybe I just got some sort of chronic diagnosis. Where do you start? Where do you begin with them?
Yeah. I have a really strong belief that we all need two plans. Nutrition
Hmm.
wise, we
Hmm.
need a plan for when we are not feeling safe and regulated.
Yeah.
And it's a completely different plan when we are.
Wow. Yes. Such a good
Right?
point. Yes.
Because I
Yeah.
think, sometimes I'll give you an example. I have beef with New Year's resolutions, and I don't really
Hmm.
have beef with New Year's resolutions, but I try very hard not to take clients in the first 3 weeks of January. Because it's so common that
Yeah.
people come in and they have this incredibly idealized view of what they want to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
maybe that works if life doesn't get lifing.
Hmm.
But the second that anything knocks you off your path,
Right.
it's gone and you feel so much shame and you're like, I didn't do it right.
Hmm.
There's that internal, like, I'm not good enough.
Yeah. Of course.
And
Uh-huh.
so that's why I really, for anybody that is struggling right at the moment, because we know that that's not forever, right? Feelings aren't forever, but we're going to create, how do we just get through today? And that's where we're going to
Hmm.
start.
Yeah. Okay. That's where we're going to start. And so I'm actually really curious, like, what do those plans tend to look like? And I know it's not the same for everybody.
Yeah.
Everybody is unique. Everybody's needs are unique, but I'm just curious if we could take a look at what might each one include for
Hmm.
someone. I'm
Yeah.
curious what that looks like.
So I think one of the most common things, and this is going to appear so deeply unsexy. People are going to be like, I'm sorry, like you have a master's degree in functional nutrition. Like this is so deeply unsexy.
Uh-huh.
Sincerely, well-balanced, regular meals. I really, my business partner to me the other day said, this was Liz Abel. She said, hey, you know what? I think we might be able to achieve world peace if ever everyone ate regular, well-balanced meals.
Yes. Yes.
I
Right.
think she's right. we don't do that. Work
Mhm.
interferes horrifically in that. And then life interferes. And
Yeah.
that is really a cornerstone of nervous system safety. Like, do we have these times or windows of time where we can just sit down, just do that one thing? I mean, it's
Mhm.
amazing how much that is such a shocking
Yeah.
thing to say.
Oh, it's so true. And right, and it like so shockingly simple, right? We all know what a well-balanced meal is. And you were so right in that there tend to be so many barriers towards being able to put that to make it happen, to make the time to make it happen. Of course, in this culture of like do it quick, do it fast, and like I'm gonna share when it comes to food, like, I'm such a culprit of that, of like, ugh, I just want it to be like quick and easy. And I just don't have any bandwidth left. So I can't possibly like muster up the energy to cook tonight. That's me. I'm giving away all my, my dysregulation around food. But it's true. It's tough. And it's interesting. My husband and I are different in that. He's way more, I want to be more conscious of like, let's make sure we are making a very well balanced meal. I want to make sure, because I'm also like a creature of habit. Like I will cook the same for meals every week because I know what ingredients to get and it's simple. And I know that like, okay, it's taco night, it's pasta night, it's not. And he is also not that way. He's like, no, I would rather die than eat another taco night. But what is interesting too, and what I would love to talk a little bit about, I'm curious how much you see this, but, and I've seen this often with clients. My husband went through SIBO. Early on when we were dating, he had SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which is a condition in the gut that definitely like really impacts mental health. And he had a very hard time. And it was a moment for us of really understanding what was going on and how directly correlated it was with food. And I'm just curious if we could talk a little bit about the gut and even SIBO. I'm surprised at how often I've heard people knowing what it is and having to navigate it.
In a lot of ways, and I don't want to sensationalize, but in a lot of ways, the gut is the canary in the coal mine, for mental health.
Yeah.
When I started my practice, I kind of was determined to just do mild depression and anxiety, and my real specialty was GI. And then I quickly realized that, boy, those are one thing. That's just one
Mm,
thing.
so true.
The thing that we don't realize is when we think about communication in the nervous system, about 80 to 90% of the messages actually go gut to brain, and only
Mhm.
10 to 20% go brain to gut. So,
Mm,
really, our gut is telling us how we're feeling in a lot of cases versus our
mhm.
brain telling us. So, that's
Yeah.
why, if there's any disruption happening in the gut for whatever reason,
Mm.
those messages are absolutely communicated to the brain. And all of a sudden, we start feeling a certain way.
Yeah.
I just had last night my first storytelling performance. I've taken up storytelling as a hobby.
It.
I know, it's so
So cool.
exciting. It's such a great creative outlet. I would encourage anybody to do
Yes.
so. But you know what I had last night? I had some disaster pants before the performance, not gonna lie. And that's a great example of, how even though I knew I was safe, even though
Yeah.
there's no one there that's gonna hurt me, they're
Yeah.
gonna clap even if I fail, right? There was nothing actually
Yeah.
wrong with me, but my gut
Yeah.
was sensing danger. And when
Mhm.
somebody has an actual disease, just imagine
Mhm.
how that is magnified.
Oh, it is so true. It is so true. And I'm actually first curious, how did it go? And
It went
how was the
great.
story? Yeah.
It was fabulous. It was
Oh,
good. I got
good.
I got my laughs, and now I'm
Good.
done, and I don't need to do it again for a hot minute.
Sure, sure. Good. Well, that takes so much vulnerability and courage to go up there. Oh, kudos to you. That's amazing. But I'm sure everybody can relate to the feeling, right, of the nerves and how your stomach reacts. And of course, every child who says, I have a tummy ache, right, when they feel nervous or overwhelmed, I'm sure many people are thinking like, okay, so that happens, right? Or I notice like my gut is really messed up. Maybe I have IBS or SIBO or whatever it is. So we know a well balanced meal, but what other components help to really strengthen the brain gut connection and really help balance our gut?
So I'm actually gonna give you a top-down versus a bottom-up.
Yeah.
Because
Okay.
I think after getting that rhythm of regulation through that well-balanced meal, usually, not every, but usually the next thing that I'm going to work on with people is really noticing and naming their nervous system states.
Mm,
Because part of that feedback loop that we get between the gut and the brain is the second we feel a symptom, we're starting to catastrophize
yep. Yeah,
and we're getting freaked out. And then that's turning up the volume on those
true.
symptoms, and round the merry-go-round
Right.
we go.
So true.
And so I really do try to work with clients to, okay, when we have that feeling, can we name where our nervous system is at? Are we in activation? Like we are in fight or flight? We're like, or are
Mm-hmm.
we in total shutdown? Let me just go back to bed. And
Mm-hmm.
let's figure out what we can eat in those states to help us get back to safety.
Yeah. Oh,
See if we can avoid the merry-go-round. Do you know what I mean? I have
yeah.
a
Right.
client right now who is a teenage female, and she has a very strong shutdown, dorsal shutdown response
Mm-hmm.
to any sort of nervous system activation in the house. If anybody raises a voice, woo, we are shut down. And she
Yeah.
just doesn't eat. And it's going to sound so silly, but the thing that we landed on was juice. Like she can always drink juice. And if she just goes and gets a juice box from the fridge and goes and sits down and drinks it, in like
Yeah.
30 minutes, she will be able to actually eat the
Mm,
meal that she had tried to eat. So it's like, let's find that moment to notice and name where we're at. And then let's decide what's going to help us get back into regulation. Have that
yeah.
be the thing that guides what's next.
I love that so much because I've had many a client who's like, I'm in that shutdown state, right? I'm hard to get out of bed and I'm not hungry. Right. And it
Yeah.
kind of stops there, right? It
Yep.
stops where I'm not hungry, so I'm not eating. But I love this approach in saying, like, okay, yeah, we're going to respect that. And let's figure out what is feasible, knowing that your body needs some nutrients, right, to help you move through this. Let's pick the one that's most accessible. Wow.
Absolutely. And having that actually, I find that people lose their tools when they are under
Hmm.
stress. Like you can
Yeah.
have a full list of tools that you have access to,
Hmm.
and the second something happens, like they are just gone from your brain. So the other thing that we do is really work to, do we need to get a list in your phone? Do we need to make shopping lists that we save in our grocery delivery app? And
Hmm.
we know
Oh, yeah.
exactly what those will be.
Right.
Do we have a text that we just have saved that we can send to a friend that says, "Hey, can you pick me up?" Whatever.
Hmm.
There's
Yeah.
all kinds of tools that we can do both individually and accessing our community too,
Mhm.
to see if we can get the nourishment that we need when we're in
Yeah.
those states.
I love that. I love that. And, I'm so curious actually if we go to, because I know one end of the, nervous system dysregulation spectrum is I'm not hungry, I'm not eating. But on the other end,
Oh, yeah.
there's I'm binging, right? I'm like, I'm so stressed and I'm just gonna like mindlessly eat this bag of chips. Guilty. Like, right? That is where what we go to. And I'm so curious, what would be your advice to a client who might be navigating that?
Yeah. I think what I would say is we moralize food in this culture.
Hmm.
We really moralize food. So let's just for a second try and take that out,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
We have all sorts of compensatory behaviors, coping behaviors when we are in that kind of state. And some people are going to lean toward eating more. Some people are going to lean toward eating less. There's a lot of different reasons for it. If you're in that state where you're eating more, again, I don't have a problem with that. It's not a
Yeah.
moral decision.
Right.
The
Yeah.
question is, eat the bag of chips. How can we get back to regulation? I think the
Yeah.
challenge that people experience about it
Mm.
is when it is the only coping tool.
Sure. Yes.
And
Great point.
then it can become a little bit challenging for people. But
Yeah.
if it's a tool and if it helps you get back into regulation, you do.
Sure. And I love how it's such a, right, this is such a shame-free approach
Yeah, because
because
if we go into that state and we're like, I have to do everything right, I have to be, even as I'm falling apart, I have to be
I
perfect.
know.
Like, what is that?
I know. Resonating hard with that. Hence the title of this podcast. But so true, right? We need permission to fall apart, to be imperfect. And I love that. Like, yeah, have the bag of chips and then let's how do we get back into a regulated state? And I think I love how you are pairing this with nutrition, with our relationship to food, because food is always, right? a a source of regulation and coping. And so it is not surprising. What are some of the challenges that you see your clients facing the most?
Yeah, I think really honestly that probably number one challenge is assuming what's right for everybody else is right for
Mhm.
you.
Mhm.
There's this thing that I just see constantly. So I have a 17-year-old son, and so I drop him off at high school occasionally, and all the kids are dressed the same. They all have the
Mhm.
same broccoli hair, all the boys.
Yes.
Nobody wears jeans anymore. Like it's fascinating to watch how they just kind of travel in packs, and it's kind of
Huh.
hard to distinguish.
Right.
And then we hit adulthood, and we kind of think that we've gone beyond that, but we haven't, because we look at our friend's plate to try and figure out what we should
Yeah.
eat. We
Yeah.
look at influencers online to try and figure out what's right or
Mhm.
wrong.
Yep.
We don't trust our own instinct. There are some
Mhm.
studies that look at food choice, and the last time that we truly intuitively eat what we need is like toddlerhood. We
Yeah.
just kind of
Yes.
outsource, but we don't see that we're doing it. We
Mhm.
see that I'm trying to eat healthy. I'm trying to
Mhm.
follow the rules. I'm trying to
Yeah.
do what I'm supposed to do. I'm
Yeah.
trying to do what everybody expects.
Yep. Yep.
And if we can have just a moment of regulation and a felt sense of
Mhm.
safety is where we can make a choice.
Mm.
We
Yes.
can't make a choice when we're in fight or flight or shutdown. We
Yeah.
are reactive,
Mhm.
but in safety, we can make a choice.
Oh,
And so I
so
think
true.
that's the one thing that I would say that just about everybody does. They don't recognize how much of their thinking about food is influenced by their nervous system.
Yeah. Oh, it's so true. And as you're saying this, I'm just thinking about I was just sitting with my toddler, my almost 3-year-old, for lunch. I almost had the urge. He's actually like he's not going. He's a great eater. He is very intuitive. He tells me what he wants. Like he ate his peaches, and he's like, I want more peaches. I'm like, you go, you got it, absolutely. My husband and I've had to work hard to actually on our own regulation, like maybe on the times that he's not eating, to say, you gotta finish this, you gotta eat this, and in order to get a cookie. Like I know that's like a big no no, not do that. But of course, it's my own dysregulation, right? My own fear, my own nervous system going off. Like, oh, is he gonna be hungry? He's not eating enough. All of that going off, and I know that it's on me to like, all right. And this is literally exactly everything I teach is around the impact of an emotionally dysregulated parent on a child's nervous system. And so here I am having to be so conscious of it in these moments. And I'm so curious, what advice would you give to parents like myself who have a toddler who's maybe eating relatively well, or even one that's really picky? I'm so curious what you would have to share.
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to pass along something that actually was a lesson for me. I'm a little bit of a collector of sayings.
Love it.
When somebody
Yes.
says something, I'm like, that's mine now. I'm going to
Taking it.
take that. But I always give credit where credit is due. So when my
Yes.
kiddo was the same age as yours, we were doing a lot of
Hmm.
early intervention for some sensory stuff
Hmm.
that
Yeah.
impacted his ability to eat. And I still
Mm.
remember this was far before I ever thought about going back to school, but a dietitian came to our house and we were talking about different things to eat. And I was saying, well, I could do this, but that takes, and I can't, and I can't figure this out. And she said, why on earth do you think you can't feed him frozen green beans? I'm like, well, you don't do that. You have to cook the green beans. And she's like, no, you don't. Why do you
Mhm.
need to do that? Why do you need to do things the exact
Mhm.
way that you have always done them? Why, if it isn't easier for him to do it this other way, can't we just
Mhm.
try this and see what this
Yeah.
might do?
Mhm.
And that was this huge light bulb for me that the way that we're taught sometimes isn't the way that our nervous systems want to engage. Like he was a
Yeah.
sensory seeker and he really loved those frozen green beans. And all of a
Aw,
sudden that made green beans possible.
fun. Yes.
Right? So like getting out of your
Mm-hmm.
head around what's right
Mm-hmm.
and wrong and back
Right.
into what feels nourishing.
Yeah. Yeah. What feels nourishing. I love that. Such a great advice, truly. And I know that you work with supplements. I feel like supplements is like kind of a charged topic sometimes in I just read a New York Times article about supplements as I'm like, oh gosh, I have supplements. Talk to us about it. Like tell me what your approach is to supplements.
Absolutely. I would love to do. It is a really charged topic, and I think there's a lot of reasons for it. There's a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people who, they see something online, they see somebody talking about something, and they go get it, and they don't have the training to think, hey, maybe I should look up like drug supplement interactions and see if there's a
Mm,
problem
yes,
there.
yes.
And so you get a lot of situations where clients come in and you're kind of like, how did you find that thing with the medications you're on? That's not a good idea.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Or that we don't supplement in people who have diabetes. That's
Mm,
not a good idea. So
mm-hmm.
there is a lack of nuance when people talk about supplements, especially on
Sure.
social media, especially if they're trying to sell them. There's a lot of lack
Mm-hmm.
of nuance.
Yep.
So that I think is problematic. The other
Mm-hmm.
thing that I've seen, and I use a lot of supplements and I ain't gonna apologize for it, but the other
Yeah.
thing that I've seen is sometimes people come in with a massive list that is just
Uh-huh.
bonkers. Like we don't need
Yeah.
to do that. Where
Right.
I do think that it can be helpful is when we really look at an individual and we say, what is possible for you in terms of food? What is not possible for you
Mm,
in terms of food? Like I think of a lot of the people like me with IBD who they can't get a lot of fiber because that's going to flare their issues.
yeah.
And yet we know that there's compounds that come from fiber that might actually help the IBD. That's a
Okay.
great case of like, well, I'm not getting it in my food or celiac. That's a great case.
Hmm.
There are vitamins and minerals that are just lacking in gluten-free foods that we just need to be
Sure.
aware of that somebody wouldn't get. So in those
Mm-hmm.
cases, supplementing, or I will say, like when I got out of school, I was a super food first person. Food first, food first, food first.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got my first person with treatment resistant depression. And then I
Mm.
went, I gotcha. Okay, maybe if
Yeah.
I give you a couple supplements, that'll take 10% off of it and then we
Yeah.
can do something around food. So I think that's where
Yeah.
I land.
Wow. Okay. Tell me, like, I'm so curious, like, what type of supplements pair well in helping treatment resistant depression?
Yeah. So there's a number of things that we can look at. I'm always curious about what's happening in the gut, and this is where it gets
Of
super
course.
person specific.
Yes.
But I'm
Yes.
always curious about what's happening in the gut. And, some of the things that we have seen evidence for are things like anti-inflammatories like turmeric or saffron, even.
Hmm.
We have some evidence for omega-3s. That's something that is woefully underconsumed in the US. And if you are
Hmm.
one of those, including myself, who
Yeah.
woefully underconsumes, like
Yes.
that may be a good approach. And then there's things that are, much more kind of individualized and
Hmm.
a little bit sexy that I don't know that I even want to name for a general population. But you can also look at things like some of the psychobiotics, some of the probiotics that have been studied for
Mm. Yeah.
mental health conditions.
Definitely. Okay. And is there like a probiotic that, or do you feel like everybody should be on a probiotic? And sorry,
Ooh,
I know that this is okay.
it's a great question. I'm going to give you nuance.
Yeah.
No, I don't think that
Yeah.
everybody should be on a probiotic. Where I use them, I think that the data is a little different than we thought when I graduated school in the dark ages. Where I use them is very prescriptive. So if I've seen that a probiotic relieves perception of stress, that's who I'm going to use it.
Mm,
I'm not going to try and use that on somebody that has anxiety and think it's going to work. So
okay.
it really is a matter of going to the literature and seeing what these different psychobiotics have been studied for.
Mm-hmm.
then
Yeah.
figuring out what we want to do. I'm going to
Yeah.
have on my website, megbowmannutrition.com/resources. There will be by the time you publish this, a list of the psychobiotics that are out there and the
Wow.
indications that they've been studied for. So that can be something
Okay.
that people can go.
Okay. So, I don't think I've ever heard the term psychobiotics. And
Mhm.
I understand. I think I get what it means. But if you could just describe that really quick for anybody else who may not have heard the word.
Sure. So it's basically a probiotic that has been shown effective for a mental health condition of some sort.
Okay. Fascinating. Fascinating. I have my own specific supplement questions I want to ask you, but maybe I'll ask you offline.
Absolutely.
Directly related to prenatal type of stuff. So, anyway, I'll ask you offline for that. But okay, and I'm so curious if somebody is sitting here like, yeah, okay. I know that my gut is a little off and I know that like, I don't know where to begin. I don't know how to like get into this safe regulated state. Like I just don't even know what to do. What would be your recommendation on where to start?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think an always accessible place is that notice and name, right? That's something that you can do today. My gut just gave me a twinge. Where is my nervous system? Is this an appropriate nervous system state for what I'm dealing with right now?
Yeah.
Beyond that, it becomes a little bit complex. There's a lot of different things that are happening. I think with different GI conditions, I think the thing that I'd be trying to find is what is going to send messages of safety. And that may be different things for different people, but
Yeah.
it really invites this spirit of experimentation. If your best friend says that this thing works great for her and you try it and it works crap for you, like that's not your thing. Let's keep moving.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
also, as we're looking for the things that help us get messages of safety, let's also not get into a very common state, which is the fix it, fight or flight. Let me fix it. Let me find
Mhm.
exactly the right
Yeah.
thing. Let me do all the research. Let me get
Yes.
it exactly
Yeah.
right. I have an armchair PhD in biochemistry now. And so there is that kind of place between let me do some experiments and just see what feels good
Mhm.
and let me try and get it perfect. And that is a fine
Yeah.
line.
Uh-huh. And oof, I resonate deeply with let's fix it for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And when you're right, we're trying things, right? We're being curious. We're seeing what works, what fits because it doesn't fit for everybody. Do you typically do when someone comes to you, do you do like blood testing? Is there like a kind of a protocol you follow to kind of get all the information?
So there is a protocol. It's not a specifically, sometimes when we think of protocols, we think we first do this, then we do this, then we do this,
Mm-hmm.
then we do this. It's not like that. But I have internally in my own brain what I call the FIGS protocol,
Mm.
FIGS, which is food, inflammation, gut, and stress.
Mm.
So when somebody comes to my office with a mental health symptom, those are the four things that we're going to look at: food, inflammation, gut, and stress. And we may or may not do it in that order, but there are things within those categories. Like for food, we're going to take a look at the protein needs and neurotransmitter cofactor vitamin needs to make
Mm-hmm.
neurotransmitters. We're going to look at omega
Sure.
3s. We're going to look at anti-inflammatories. So there
Mm-hmm.
definitely is kind of a list of things that I do to assess, and blood work often is part of that. Sometimes that includes additional lab work like stool tests.
Mm.
So
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. So you're gathering all your information to then, yeah, look at the whole picture. And I love how FIGS tends to embody the whole picture. So fascinating. What do you wish all of your clients knew? Like if you kind of see any themes, like what do you wish you could impart to all of them?
I think the thing that I would say is it's okay to just show up the way you are today and let food be what it is, because that doesn't mean that it's going to be the same tomorrow. That doesn't mean that it's the same in 2 weeks. It's okay to have
Yeah.
rhythms. It's okay to have hyperfixations on I went through a taco phase. My husband was like, "The taco phase needs to stop."
This needs to end.
It's okay to have we don't have to do things the same every day. It's okay to have different ways to approach it. And it's just okay to be where you're at.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love this. It's such a compassionate approach. And I love that it's compassionate, it's a curious, and it's a connective approach to your relationship to your body and to your relationship to food. And I love how, in all of it, the nervous system regulation really helps to keep us in line, to stop us from doing the WebMD rabbit hole, right? The I'm feeling this, right? Alarm, it must mean this. Because I love how you're saying, let's stop that. Let's try and catch that in the middle. How do we re-regulate? How do we find safety? How do we know what foods are safe for us? And
Right
just,
now, right?
yeah, right now.
'Cause it may not be tomorrow. I mean, I think that's
Yeah.
the thing that's so clear. So when I have a client that has a food that they think they're sensitive to, every time
Hmm.
I eat blah, 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 this happens.
Hmm.
And we might do a little experiment where we pull that food out for a little bit and we see how they feel. I always have them agree before we'd really pull it out that they're going to reintroduce it 3 times, because I promise you the first time
Good.
you reintroduce it, you're going to be anxious
Uh-huh.
and you're going to have symptoms. And then we're going to give you a washout period, and then you're going to do it again and you might be anxious and you might have symptoms. But usually by the 3rd time, if you're like, I've eaten
Mm,
chocolate 3 times and I've gotten a
okay.
migraine each time, that's
Right.
probably a good indication.
Yes.
But just really acknowledging and befriending your nervous system, because it's not
Yeah.
trying to harm you, it's
Yeah.
actually trying to
Right.
protect you.
To protect you. Exactly. Oh my gosh. I can tell your clients are so lucky to work with you. Truly. I'm like, oh, I wish my husband had you to talk to when he was going through SIBO a while back. And so I'm so curious, what do you offer, and how can our listeners get in touch with you if they are wanting to reach out to connect?
Yeah. So I have a private practice that I'm a co-founder of. It's called Nutrition Hive, and you can get there
Mm-hmm.
either via nutritionhive.health or via my
Mm-hmm.
website, which is megbowmannutrition.com. And I do have a book on trauma and nutrition
Amazing.
coming out, polyvagal inspired nutrition for trauma, coming out October 20th.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Wait, I'm gonna write that down. So maybe we can release this in alignment with that. That's so exciting. And where will the book be found?
So it is available wherever, and they also made me do the audiobook. So if you choose to do
Great.
that, yeah, that was a nervous system exposure, like listening to your
Sure.
own voice for 4
Huh?
days. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Oh, so cool. Can you give us just some more points on what the book is going to cover? This sounds
Yeah.
fascinating.
So the first third of the book really talks you through polyvagal theory so that you can understand what it feels like when you step outside of regulation. What are some of those
Hmm.
first hints that you get when you step outside of regulation, and what happens in your own system with food when that does happen? And then the middle of the book is really figs. So it is, how does food, inflammation, gut, and stress, how does trauma impact those? And then the
Hmm.
last little bit of the book is, let's make a plan for when you're feeling dysregulated. And then let's make a plan for when you're feeling regulated. So I really walk you through it.
Amazing. I cannot wait to recommend this to everybody. And we will, of course, share the link to it in the show notes so that you can get it too. This is so exciting, Meg.
I know.
And we will, yeah, we will share a link to your website so that everybody can find you there as well. Meg, thank you so much for being here today. You are a wealth of knowledge and information, and I'm sure that everybody is really connecting a lot of dots and has really tangible takeaways on how to even improve their own regulation and connection to their own body and nutrition today.
Well, thank you
So
so much
this
for
is
having me. I
great.
appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to another episode of Good Girls Gotta Heal. I am so grateful to have you in this community. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. That helps us out greatly. And we'll see you next time.